What's up, college football fans and Mean Green fans and UAB fans? Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show, and today I'm joined by John Duncan, the one and only John who runs the Blazer Victory podcast. Is that right?
That's right, man. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. But before we get into all things UAB related and North Texas related in week 3, you already know the drill, guys. If you're a fan of college football recruiting, the G5 football world, the transfer portal, any or all of the above, consider hitting that like and subscribe button because that is truly all that we talk about. Also, if John and I say anything on today that you agree or disagree with, let us know in the comments below. All that stuff really helps channels like this get picked up by the YouTube algorithm and pushes it out just a little bit further. Alrighty, John. Well, really quick, before we get into all things UAB, where can the people find you at and all the content that you're putting out?
Yeah, so Steve Irvine and I have a UAB sports podcast that you guys definitely check us out. It's called the Blazer Victory Podcast, and you can follow that account on twitter.com/blazerpod. Also, if you want to follow my personal account, I believe it's on the screen. I'm at John C. Duncan if you want to. But I also have another podcast called the G5 Beat, where we just cover G5 football, just as a broader take on the G5. But definitely, love our Blazers and, love talking UAB football. And thank you for having me on today. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. I know for 2 podcasts and a family and a full-time job, it's really hard to squeeze these in. And I'm very aware of a tight schedule. So a little bit about your G5 beat. Why, what made you guys get into that? Because I mean, that's pretty broad coverage, which you guys do a good job of. But what really interested you guys in talking, broader than just UAB?
Yeah, man, and it's a hard podcast to do, following so many teams. I mean, we try to do the best that we can. But I mean, a couple years ago, we just me and Josh got together and just basically, we grew up loving the underdog. I'm loving G5 football. Now he's an Alabama fan, of course, so he loves Alabama. But just the coverage wasn't there, and that's why we really, there's a couple good G5 podcasts. Underdog Dynasty does a good job, but we just wanted to, start our own, and that, we did that in 2019 was our first year, and last year, 2020, was the first year of my Blazer Victory podcast that I do with Steve, and kind of the same reason. Local coverage in Alabama is just not so good for UAB, and we wanted this to be a media outlet to just talk to UAB fans and, about UAB football and UAB basketball, and just, tell everybody what's going on with UAB. Because like I said, the local coverage is not too great. I don't want to bash anybody in particular, but it's just not good. Most people in the media just cover Alabama and Auburn and leave UAB out of it. And that was the main reason why Steve and I, wanted to start the podcast. And we enjoy doing it. And we're on year 2 of the Blazer Victory podcast. So I enjoy both my podcasts.
That's awesome. So kind of getting into UAB a little bit more here. Okay, so you guys won the conference last year, the defending champs, and you guys won it also in 2018, right?
Right.
Okay, so, what's the attitude, the spirit like, in Birmingham right now? Like, are y'all like, is there like not an arrogance, but is there like a confidence of like, hey, we're a dominant figure in this conference and definitely out of the West. What's the mindset like amongst the fans, would you say?
Oh, there's no doubt we're confident. And we, and this year in particular, we have high expectations for our team. This is Bill Clark's most talented team that he's had since he came to UAB in 2014. And, he's got the toughest schedule he's had here at UAB. That kind of speaks for what happened last week in Athens up against a tough Georgia team. But no, fan spirits are high still, high expectations. I expect to compete for a conference championship again. And, we didn't win the conference in 2019, but we were still in the Conference USA Championship. Unfortunately, we failed at FAU. But that's crazy, man. You've been in the conference championship game every year since 2018. And this is a program that wasn't around for 2015 and 2016. We took a 2-year hiatus, and, we don't have to get into what all happened there. But, we're very confident. Fans are confident, and I'm looking forward to get this conference slate started this Saturday down in Denton.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody likes to talk about Dynasty, and obviously the first team that comes to everybody's mind in recent years is Alabama, rightfully so. But Dynasty doesn't have to just be national championship over and over and over. In my personal opinion, I think that can be conference champion. Because realistically, a G5 school, at least not until the playoffs get extended, we're not going to win a national championship,
No.
whatever. But there's plenty of stuff to play for other than a national championship. I don't believe there's just one winner at the end of the season like the NFL. I believe there's a lot of winners in their own respectable leagues and conferences and divisions and all that. So that being said, 2018, you win it. 2019, you make it to the conference championship game. 2020, you win it again. If you guys were to win it this year, do you think it would be fair to say that you guys have your own dynasty going?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, what Clark has built here on the South Side, I mean, if we can, get there again and win it again this year, then there's no doubt it's a dynasty. I mean, no doubt.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. So that's 3 conference championships in 4 years, right? 2018, 2020, 21, right?
Right.
3 and 4. And like you said, you made it to the game, that 2019 year. So that's interesting. Who is the biggest team you guys fear out of the West?
Out of the West, okay.
I think that I mean, I don't have the conference pull up, but I mean, just the bigger names is UTSA's in the West.
It's got to be UTSA.
Yeah.
I mean, what Jeff Traylor has done with the Roadrunners, I mean, just his first year last year, he's already off to a hell of a start this year, beating Illinois.
Yes.
So it's definitely, yeah, and I know North Texas fans don't like to hear that, but yeah, right now it's got to be UTSA.
Right. And a lot of people, I've kind of somewhat surprised, they've picked UTSA to win the conference all in all. A lot of people have FAU all in all.
Mm-hmm.
I picked you guys just from the standpoint of y'all won it last year, returning majority of the people. I'm just not going to bet against that personally. I mean, I get the argument for UTSA. I do. And we hate UTSA. That's our in Texas rival conference school. We just can't, whatever. But I mean, they're good. And obviously out of the East, though, I mean, that FAU, Marshall, they look solid. But yeah, I was just surprised that so many people were quick to kind of like not have such expectations for you guys, so, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Hopefully you get stunned in Denton this weekend and, you guys have to scramble a little bit, but we'll see. Anyway, so what is your thoughts for this game? Coming into Denton, is there any level? So you guys are coming in as a 14-point favorite.
Right.
Are there any concerns? I mean, is this something that you're like, okay, we got to watch this? Because I don't know about how you feel, but UNT, even when we had those really good years, we were flying high. Pretty much every single conference game, I was stressing. I was just like, oh man, it's Rice, it's Utah. And sometimes we would play those teams closer than we should have. But I was just I never really felt comfortable with a conference game. But what is your feelings, the fans' feelings about this week's matchup against North Texas?
I mean, it's the first conference game, and I know you just mentioned, in Conference USA, I mean, you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we talked about earlier about how UAB's been in his last 3 out of 4 years, but I mean, you really just don't know on a week-to-week basis in this conference. Really, anybody can beat anybody, and we've had some close games with Rice last year. We had COVID issues last year in that game, but I mean, UTEP can beat anybody on a given Saturday. I mean, La Tech, don't sleep on them in the West. North Texas, obviously. Southern Miss, Will Hall, he's got something brewing down there. So, I mean, the West is loaded, and I do still think that the West is a better division than the East. And I do, the East is going to come down between either Marshall, FAU, or and don't sleep on Western Kentucky. I really like them this year with all their Houston Baptist transfers they got.
Yeah,
but I mean,
Houston Baptist seniors, what we should call them.
Yes, right. But I mean, this is the first conference game for UAB, and UAB is coming off of a bad loss to Georgia. And I know I hear UAB fans right now saying it's Georgia. They still are the number 2 team in the country, and they are the number 2 country for a reason. I mean, they are talented, 5-star after 5-star. The UAB secondary just got exposed this past Saturday in Athens, and I did make the trip to Athens. And I mean, I didn't like what I saw, obviously, but I was one of the people that actually thought we could keep it close and maybe even have a, as crazy as to say, a shot in it. But I mean, that's just the fan coming out. I mean,
For sure.
you want to win these, P5 games, and North Texas has done a great job lately. Beating Arkansas a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So North Texas has done it, but UAB, we haven't had a P5 win in years. But I mean, the secondary was definitely exposed. Folks in the secondary were kind of confused about where they were supposed to be, just very undisciplined, which was really odd for a Bill Clark coached football team. But that being said, I don't know if you guys were able to, if you're listening, able to catch our recap episode of the Georgia game at the Blazer Victory podcast. Clark's going to have them working hard this week during practice. So your first inclination might be to say, well, North Texas is catching UAB at a really good time, coming off of that beatdown in Georgia. But I kind of think the opposite, man. I think that was a wake-up call in Athens for UAB that, we needed to get right and need to grow a lot from that game. And, Coach Clark was able to go over his, quote-unquote, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything from the film session. And we do have a lot to work on. But I can guarantee you that Clark is having them work on everything this week in practice to get ready for North Texas. We have all the respect in the world for Seth Luttrell and, his offenses that he's had down there in Denton. Every year he seems to have a really good offense, even past Mason Fine. I personally thought when Mason Fine was gone that they were going to take a dip back. But in fact, last year, I mean, they were arguably even better on the offensive side of the ball. But I can tell you this, I was able to rewatch the SMU North Texas game in full yesterday, and that 35-12 game, that was not a 23-point loss. North Texas played very well, especially for three of the four quarters. But what I was most impressed was what I saw from North Texas on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, let's face it, and I'm sure North Texas fans will agree too, the past couple of years just really bad on defense. And I always said, and I say on the G5 beat, that if North Texas can just get a small bit better or a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball, they can take that next step and, get back to competing for the West Division champ in Conference USA. So I did like what I saw on the defensive side of the ball from North Texas. Reuter, I don't know. He had glimpses where he looked really good, but he threw two really bad interceptions. One in particular, going in the red zone against SMU, and so I don't know. I'm expecting a battle this Saturday in Denton. I do. You said earlier that it's a 14-point spread. I'm in favor of UAB. I do think it'll be closer than that.
I hope so. Yeah. So I mean, talking about like, is this a good time to catch you as far as in the season, coming off of a big loss from Georgia? I don't really put too much stock into that loss. I mean, I guess you obviously, regardless of the skill level you're going against, like you were saying, being in the right spot, that doesn't require skill. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how good your opponent is, just to be in the right fits, whether that be secondary, the linebacker, whatever the case may be. But I really didn't, whatever. I mean, like any Conference USA school would probably get ran by Georgia. I mean, just it is what it is. I mean, it's kind of irrelevant to some degree. I mean, but it's a nice little stimulus check, like
1.8 million. Man.
Yeah. So who really won there? I don't know, but the Jackson State game, especially after what they did at Florida State, was really what I was more concerned or impressed with, or whichever way you want to take it. And Tyler Johnson went 17 for 21 in that game for 320 yards, 2 TDs. And who's the bell cow back this year? Is McBride still the guy, or is that Brown Jr. kid coming up?
Going into the season, we all anticipated that it would be Dwayne McBride. Mm-hmm. And I still think it can be. But Jermaine Brown, I mean, really, even in the Georgia game, he's running the ball really well. But I do still like Dwayne McBride to be that number one guy, since Spencer Brown, our career rushing leader in UAB history, is gone. But Dwayne McBride, in the Jacksonville State game, he fumbled it twice. And that was one thing that we didn't see at all last year. I don't think he fumbled it one time, or if he did, I can't remember. But yeah, fumbled it twice in Jacksonville State. Now a good thing coming out of that Georgia game, and Steve and I really talked about that, was ball security was good with both of our running back, all of our running backs. Dwayne, he took a few pops in the Georgia game as expected, but he held onto the ball. So that was definitely an improvement to see him. Because sometimes when you start fumbling the ball, it can almost become just a mental thing, that, the guy's going to try to strip it and I'm just going to let it go. So honestly, it is a mental thing, but I did like what I saw in Athens out of Dwayne McBride. Good hard running, and he held onto the ball.
So as far as receivers go, obviously Shropshire, he seems pretty legit. Outside of him, are there any other elite? I mean, I know they're solid, but was he like our Jalen Darden last year? You know what I mean? Like we had Jalen Darden and we had good receivers to complement him, but that was different levels. It was pretty obvious. Would you say that's like the case here, or is it not that much of a gap?
Well, as of now, I mean, Shropshire is definitely our number one guy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Behind him, we do have, Ryan Davis is good. Rajay Johnson-Sanders was a high-level recruit out of JUCO a couple years ago. We expect great things out of him, and he showed some great things in the Jacksonville State game. But wide receiver was one of those positions that we did have, was one of those question marks coming into this 2021 season. Because, we lost Austin Watkins, Myron Mitchell. We lost our top guys from the 2020 season. But Shropshire has stepped up. All of them really looked good against Jacksonville State. Unfortunately, they did not look as well in the Georgia game. But it is what it is.
Is everybody still pretty high on Johnston?
Yes, if you ask me personally, I am. I was very disappointed in his play in Athens Saturday, but it's like my co-host Steve said, don't put the 100% blame on him. I mean, there were the offensive line, could have done a better job. Wide receivers could have done a better job. Getting open, running better routes. So I don't put most of the blame, or I don't put all the blame on Johnston, but I do put most of the blame on him because a couple of his interceptions, he was just chunking the ball up, and you can't play that when you go into an SEC environment. And that was one of my critiques on him, is that he's been in those situations before. He's played at Tennessee, he's played at Texas A&M. He should have been used to that environment, and unfortunately, just had a terrible day. But we do have some guys right behind him. Dylan Hopkins is our number 2 quarterback. He's a dual threat guy out of Tennessee. He actually, if you go back to the 2019 season, he actually helped lead UAB to that Conference USA championship late in the year when Tyler Johnson was hurt. So he showed some things in the Jacksonville State game and Georgia game as well. They have some separate packages that they can run with Dylan Hopkins in there as opposed to Tyler Johnston. But we still have all the confidence in the world with Tyler Johnston. But hey, if he goes out this Saturday and immediately throws a couple interceptions, it's going to be time to pull him and maybe try Hopkins in there as the main guy for a few series and see what he can do. And if he can't do anything, we've got another guy behind him, Lucero, who played really well in the South Alabama game last year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I still do have confidence in Johnston.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, two-headed question here, two-headed dragon. One is, what do you expect the game plan to be like from you guys this Saturday in Denton from UAB? Like, what are you expecting to see from the offense as well as the defense? And two, what does North Texas have to do to pull off the upset against UAB?
Well, number one, on the offensive side of the ball, is just establish the run. And then, we both know North Texas has not fared very well in 2 games against a rushing attack. Even going back to the FCS game, week 1, I think they gave up like 230 yards or something like that on the ground.
261.
Oh, 261. Okay, well, even better. But no, yeah, UAB is definitely going to try to establish that run game and just try to. Yeah, and I expect North Texas on the defensive side of the ball to stack the ball and force UAB to throw the ball to beat North Texas. So we're going to have to just establish the run somehow and run some play action passing off of that and hope catch some of that North Texas secondary sleeping or head creeping up the line of scrimmage expecting a running play. But so I definitely expect a lot of Dwayne McBride and Jermaine Brown toting the rock this Saturday in North Texas. On the defensive side of the ball for UAB, honestly, man, it's just go back to your basics. I mean, Clark, and I'm sure that's what he's telling them in practice this week. We've just got to get back to our fundamentals and just play defense, and as I mentioned earlier in Georgia, it just looked like a lot of times our secondary was just not where they were supposed to be for that certain play. Now, I don't know if it was crowd noise or what was going on Saturday, but just play basic fundamental Clark defense, and UAB will be fine. Now, for North Texas on the offensive side of the ball, Reuter is going to have to connect on a lot of his vertical passing attempts to have a shot against UAB and pull the upset. He hit a couple of them in the SMU game, but there were some other ones. If he would have hit, then North Texas would have definitely been able to kind of beat SMU. But another quick thing the North Texas offense is going to have to do this Saturday to have a shot at beating UAB is converting the red zone. If you're kicking field goals almost every time, you're not really going to have a chance at pulling that upset. So, early on in that SMU game, 2 quick field goals. I kind of wish Luttrell maybe be a little more aggressive and, try to maybe either go for it on 4th down. I know they were 0 for 4 against SMU, but, I mean, hey, when you're going up against Mordecai and a high-profile offense from SMU, I mean, you got to take your chances when you have them. You can't just sit there and kick field goals and expect to beat a high-powered offense like that. But as I mentioned earlier, give the North Texas defense a lot of credit. They hung in that game really 3 or 4 quarters, and it kind of just got away late. That's it.
So you're saying from a defensive perspective from North Texas' point of view, either stack the box or disguise the blitz, do what you can to take away the run and make Johnston beat you with his arm.
You have to take away the run game, because if you let UAB get their run game going, you have no chance. Okay.
And then offensively, hit the downfield strikes and come away in the red zone.
Yes.
Yeah. With more than just 3 points. Okay.
It sounds simple, but I mean,
yes, simple enough.
Right.
Yes, but obviously we definitely know that it's easy for us to talk about and coach from our couches, but yeah, it's definitely harder to produce that on the field and all the X's and O's. Anyway,
yeah, man, but I'm excited. I mean, we unfortunately didn't get to play you guys last year during the COVID year. So it's been a couple years since we played North Texas. So I'm excited to, I won't be able to make the trip, unfortunately, but I'll be watching from, I would say TV, but it'll probably be a Roku app or something since we're on Stadium. But life in Conference USA, right?
That's right. That's right, man. That's absolutely right. Well, cool, man. So the way I think you guys stack up against our last opponent, SMU, I think defensively, I think you guys are better than SMU is currently. Offensively, I think they would have the best. Yeah, I think they would have the best offense in Conference USA. I really do. I mean, they're just every time Mordecai has the ball and with their receivers, it's like this could be a touchdown or a 40 or 60-yard play. It's just dynamite. Like kind of like that McGregor. They just have that knockout punch. Just you never know. Right. Well, cool. Well, John, anything else we need to touch on before we wrap this up?
No, I think we hit it. I think we hit everything pretty much.
Okay, well, I want to leave off with a little bit of a cliffhanger that we can parlay into your show that we'll do later on tonight. And I know as far as what day this will come out, whatnot, that'll vary a little bit. So if you're watching this and you've watched it till the end, be sure to go check out. This will be on the Blazer Victory podcast, right? That's a show that we'll be doing together tonight.
Yes.
Okay, so be sure go find the Blazer Victory podcast, because I'm going to somewhat defend this statement that I'm about to make, and John doesn't know what I'm about to say. So, John, you don't know this about me, but I'm a pessimistic person. I'd rather prepare for the worst and hopefully just pleasantly be surprised. I have us going 4-8 this year. That's what I predicted, and I think we could do better than that, but I just predicted that we wouldn't. And some of those 8 losses come to UAB as well as La Tech. I think we're going to pull off the upset this Saturday. I think we're going to do it. And I'm just going to leave it with that. And we'll talk about, I'll give you all the reasons why on your show, on the podcast. And so guys, make sure, go over, check out the Blazer Victory podcast, and we'll talk about why this could be the time that North Texas pulls it off.
Looking forward to it.
All righty, John. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.